Today, Open Source Security is talking to Seth Larson, the resident security developer at the Python Software Foundation. Seth, I want to welcome you back to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always lovely to be here, Josh.
I'm excited. Seth is awesome. I love talking to Seth. So, all right. Why don't you explain kind of who you are, what you're doing, and we'll go from there. Because we have a packed agenda. I don't think we're going to get to it all, but we'll see.
Yeah, so I'm Seth, and I do security work at the Python Software Foundation. I mostly focus on kind of like standards work or tooling work or things related to like C Python, the actual programming language and the implementation. And then I have like a counterpart at the PSF, Mike Fiedler, who focuses on PyPI, which is how a lot of people interact with the Python ecosystem. So I'm everything besides PyPI,
which is
a lot of things.
I know the work you do, but I still like when I think about trying to manage security for a package repository that's well used, my brain hurts, man. I know there's the things I know terrify me, and I know the things Mike must work on. There are things I can't even imagine going on. It's one of those.
Mike also has his work cut out for him.
No doubt. Okay, so I want to start us out with the Python Software Foundation. Recently, I don't know if they gave it back or they just denied it, how it works, but there was a grant from the National Science Foundation in the United States, and the PSF basically said, no, we're not going to take your grant because we don't like the strings you've attached. So why don't you explain this to us? Because I have an enormous amount of respect for, I think, the just courage it took for this move.
Yeah. So the short of it is that there's this opening called it's like Safe OSE, Safe Open Source Security Ecosystem, something like that, some acronym. That proposal opened up sometime last year, and the PSF basically saw it and was like, this is a great opportunity for us. We're going to apply. So I was the principal investigator, and Lauren was my co-principal investigator. We both applied, and over the course of a year have been kind of like working on this proposal and consulting with a bunch of people and getting recommendations and like kind of learning how to do it while we're doing it too, because it's the very first proposal to the NSF that the PSF has ever submitted. And then we basically got informed by the NSF that they're like the terms that were going to be applied to the grant were changing with a very specific line that basically said we would not be able to run any programs related to DEI at all during the term of the grant. And so the interesting part would be that if you're found doing that, then they take back the money, but a lot of the money is meant to go towards staffing. And so it'll be money that we've already spent. And that's a huge risk for us, right? And so we basically withdrew our proposal. And this was after we had been recommended for funding. So it meant that like if things would have proceeded, we probably would have gotten the money and been able to do the work. And then we basically, because we had put so much effort into this, we announced that to the community. And really, it's been kind of great seeing all the lovely messages from the community. And also, we raised the last number before like our actual end of year fundraiser opened was $160,000 from the community donations just because of this announcement. So like the response has been super overwhelmingly positive, and I think just to kind of quote, this is someone, I can't remember who said this, but it was a hard decision, but it was an easy decision, right? Because our mission statement literally says promoting an equitable and diverse Python ecosystem. So if you look at that, it's like, yeah, well, of course we're not gonna, take these strings, but turning down 1.5 million, I think the PSF, that would be a very significant percentage of our revenue or of our operating budget for the upcoming year. So
yeah, that's tough, man. I mean, and the first thing I thought of is, so I talked to Deb Nicholson. It's been a couple episodes now, but I mean, one of the things she talked about at length was just all of the various outreach campaigns the PSF does. And obviously diversity is a huge part of that. And even she, talked about how amazing the diversity is and how much you learn and how advantageous it is to the community. It's just, I hear you. Like, I get it was hard. It's hard to turn down $1.5 million, but it's pretty easy, I think, when it's you folks.
It's hard and easy, right? Yeah, it is. It
Oh,
captures the sentiment very well. Yeah, no, the response has been really, really great. Like it all it does is it tells me that like I'm serving the right community, right? So
awesome. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's great. And I guess I'm not totally surprised.
no,
I feel like I've been around the open source nerd community long enough that I mean, there's some will say that maybe wouldn't agree, but there's a lot that certainly push the diversity angle. So I love it. That's cool. That's cool.
yeah,
Okay. I want to move on to PyCon US
mm,
because I am so excited when you told me there is a security track. And this is something I know I talked to Deb. I can't remember if I talked to Deb about this on the show or not. Like it's one of those, it's been long enough, it's fallen out of my brain. But when you have security conferences, right, we get all these security people that attend them. And I feel like it turns into a big echo chamber more often than not. And so I think having security tracks at non security conferences is amazing for two reasons. Number one is security people get to interact, we'll say get to, put that in quotes, get to interact with non-security developers because I think it's often easy as security people to assume we know best or
yeah,
assume we know what developers want or should be doing or whatever. And I think it's also good because on the other side of the coin, obviously, you have developers who get to interact with the security people. And, developers are legendary for being hard to work with. And did I say I said developers? Security people are legendary for being hard to work with.
yeah.
And I think a lot of developers just don't like security people for a variety of reasons. So tell us about this. Okay, let me back up. I jumped the gun a little bit. First, tell us about the PyCon, right?
Yeah.
And then tell us a little bit about your security track you're running, and then we'll go from there because this is so cool.
Yeah, so PyCon US, it's the biggest conference in North America about Python. It's the PSF's, premier conference, basically the biggest one that we put on every year. And there's just a whole lot of Pythonistas that come to PyCon US, a lot of the core team, a lot of people that are doing, maintenance of packaging tools. All of these people come to the conference, a lot of experts, and we all either like put on talks or we deliberate about new features. The language summit and the packaging summit. So like those are places where what's coming next for Python happen there. There's tutorials. There's just everything. There's lots of open spaces, so you get to like show off what cool things you're doing with Python. So it's just kind of like a place for like experts, enthusiasts, and people that are just starting or people that have been doing it since the beginning to all intermix and basically spread ideas, what Python should be and what's happening now. So,
Right,
it is really an amazing conference.
So let me
I will
ask,
say.
you said there's
Yeah.
space for people to show off what they're doing with Python. So
Yeah.
I know like in the embedded space now, like hobbyist hardware hacking type things, like it's all micro Python everywhere I look,
Mhm.
right? So there are like a bunch of like weird hardware projects going on in the
Yeah.
spaces then?
Yeah. So just last year, I watched a talk about basically taking old keyboards, extremely old keyboards, and making them work with MicroPython. And I was like,
Nice.
this is an amazing talk. And I think they use like a Raspberry Pi and everything too to kind of like translate the communication between the two computers. And I'm like, this is so cool. And that was using Python in it. So that was really incredible. There's always tons of hardware stuff.
So I
Um,
have my funny
yeah.
story I'll tell you. So there's
Mm,
a conference I attend every year called CypherCon in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's the Hacker History podcast I do is actually part of the CypherCon umbrella.
mhm.
And the badges this year, they always have like this very hackable badge, and like hacking the badge is part of the fun, obviously. And this year they just had a Raspberry Pi Pico in the badge with USB port, like reachable, running MicroPython. And so obviously the first thing I did was just I downloaded all the code and I stuck it all in GitHub, and then everyone started going to town on it. And I remember the badge creator was like, how'd you find it so fast? I'm like, it's MicroPython. Like this is the easiest thing in the world to extract. Like, come
Yeah,
on.
that's lovely. No, that's super awesome. No, I have not dipped my toes a ton into like MicroPython and microprocessing, but it
Nice.
is
It's
a
fun.
really, really fun place. The physicality of the thing, it's something that you don't always get with software, right? Where
Yeah.
you're able to
Yeah.
control a physical device.
Yes. Yes. And it amuses me because you have the like just richness of the Python ecosystem then to use. I mean, I just had this where I've got like some projects I was doing, and I'm like, I wonder if someone has a library for that. I'm like, oh, there is. I'm done.
Always a
And
library.
now it took me, 20 minutes instead of 4 days. So
Right. No, there's always a library in Python. That's one of the magical things.
that's right. That's right. Cool. Okay. So now tell me about the security track at PyCon, because
Yes,
that's brand new, you said.
that's brand new. So in previous years, I mean, there's always security content at
For sure.
PyCon.
Yeah.
But new this year, so there is new actual talk tracks. And so the security track that I'm chairing along with Juanita is called Trailblazing Python Security.
Nice.
And there's also an AI track. And this
Of course
security
there is.
track is basically, well, of course, right? I see you smiling. Um, so this security track is basically going to be a whole bunch of security tracks all end to end to end to end in the same room. So if you're interested in Python security, you come to that room and then you just get all the security stuff. All the security experts at PyCon will likely be there too. So there'll be a lot of, cross contamination of ideas. We're really excited about it. I think it's going to be great because in previous years, we've done things like open spaces that are themed about security, or we'll try to do like an unofficial talk track where, you run it in an open space. I've been involved in a couple of those, and now we've finally upgraded it to like an official thing. So if you go to the CFP of PyCon US, which closes on December 19th, and you have a security talk idea that has any amount of Python in it, we would really love to hear about it, even if it's like 95% security. It just like Josh said, like it's really great to get to have that like rubber meets the road where you get to talk to developers and talk to security experts and you kind of get to meet in the middle. I think that that's where the most interesting discussions happen. Yeah, so if you have one of those talks, submit to the CFP
All
December
right.
19th. Be
So
really excited.
so let me ask a clarifying question, Seth.
Mm-hmm.
If I was to ask a member of the review board what sort of topics they feel are especially interesting from a security perspective right now, what would such a person say, do you think?
Yeah, so stuff involving like vulnerability management or package management or how you're deploying Python applications securely to the
Ah,
cloud or to bare metal, how you're doing security work with Python, if it's like how to use Python as a tool for security work, like vulnerability scanning or malware scanning. There's a lot of different angles to security, just like supply chain security in general. So if you have like a specific security tool that you're using and how does that interact with Python? How does it like work well with Python? How does it not work well with Python? Because I mean, even though Python's a huge ecosystem, there's all sorts of different, like how well does it handle all these like little edge cases? There's a lot of different ways you could go with it. I don't think it's pretty open in terms of in terms of theming, as long as it's security related.
yeah. Okay. I mean, that seems fair. That doesn't surprise me. And yeah, Python's everywhere from the, we'll say I don't know, the consumer side of security, right? Where people like me write all kinds of wacky stuff. You've got the more, I guess, distributor side of things
Mm-hmm.
where we get all these various ecosystems full of data, be it literally ecosystems from like Andrew Nesbitt. There's like what Google OSV, there's stuff you guys work on at the OpenSSF. There's, and
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing. And I feel like everywhere I look, Python is there all the time. It's
It's
awesome.
a lot of Python.
That's cool though. Okay. All right. So for anyone interested, I'm going to put a link in the show notes. The CFP closes on December 19th, which is going to be like what, 3 or 4 weeks from when the show goes out. I can't remember exactly
Mm-hmm.
what the calendar looks like, but anyone interested, like don't dawdle on this one. This is not like those CFPs that are open for like 6 months and then, then they get a million entries. So that's really cool. I love that you're doing this so much. I wish well, I shouldn't say wish. I hope every conference, like every tech conference, especially developer focused, has a security track in the future because I think it is so important for security people and developers to actually talk to each other. That is one of my biggest complaints I have, like just in general about security stuff. All right. All right, Seth. Let's check what's next on this list here. There's a white paper that did you write it? It was written with Alpha Omega. Are you?
Yeah, so I was the primary author.
You are the
of this
primary
white
author.
paper.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I have it in this tab here. I suppose I could have looked. Um, what is it? What does it say? Oh, it does. Author Seth Larson, Python Software Foundation. Okay. Okay. I was on page 3. Anyway. Okay. So you
You're
wrote a
just too
paper.
eager, Josh.
I there's so much cool stuff to talk about. All right, let me see. You named it slippery zips and sticky tar pits, security and archives. Tell us about your white paper, Seth, because I feel like this is a hip topic these days.
Yes. Yeah. So this white paper is about a handful of like software vulnerabilities affecting tar archives and zip archives. And so those archive formats are used very just all over the place in turn, both in Python and in all these other open source packaging ecosystems, right? Because we need some way to distribute all of these files for software projects to the end user in a package, right? And so like a package actually is like a zip file. So if you've ever heard of like the Python wheel format, it's a zip.
Yeah, you can unzip them. Jar files are the same thing. Just unzip a jar file. What's inside?
Same thing with jars. Same thing with, what is it, like OpenDocX? All tons of formats are just like secretly zips in disguise.
Yep.
So I wanted to quickly just thank the security researchers that actually like found and reported these vulnerabilities. So Caleb Brown and Tim Hatch were both the reporters. They worked a whole bunch with us, like on the CPython team and the PyPI team, to like actually get this from reported to fixed and tested and all that. So thank you to them. But yeah, these vulnerabilities are very wide ranging. They affect both like people that are installing packages, people that are publishing packages, people that are analyzing packages, because these vulnerabilities make it really difficult to know what is the authoritative, like what should the package have inside of it, for example, right? And then there's also aspects of like when you extract a package, when you actually install it onto your system, you want it to go into a certain directory. the place where you're installing it to. But if you are using an implementation of tar or zip that is not secure towards like making sure that the actual files end up in that directory, what can happen is it will, with the privileges of whatever is doing the installing, place files anywhere on the file system. And so those are things like you've heard of maybe like zip slip. It's something like that, right? Where you have a whole bunch of parent directories inside of a name, inside of an archive, and then it just places it. And then if that file ends up replacing another file that was like important for something, that could be bad for a system. So that's kind of like the gist of it. And this is white paper is talking about remediating the vulnerabilities and how we were able to work with these reporters and basically the implementations for like installers, for Python installers, to try to make it so that the ecosystem is just safer in general, even if we don't know how many vulnerable implementations are out there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, and Python's a great use case where I think a lot of the weird features aren't needed, because fundamentally you're just taking a thing and you're unpacking whatever is inside beneath some directory. Like in the Python, well, you correct me, but I have a suspicion in the Python ecosystem, it should never be a reason for a package to try to unpack something outside of the directory it's operating on. Yes?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. And the number of times that's needed is like exceedingly low and strange corner cases. Right. And this is one of the things, Seth, that like drives me crazy sometimes is when a lot of these standards and formats were created back in like the 70s and 80s, generally speaking, there was this idea of like be strict on what you send and accept and loose on what you accept. I can't remember the exact terminology, right?
Yeah, it's like what is it? Like strict in what you emit and liberal in what you accept.
Yeah,
something
right.
to that effect. Yeah,
exactly. And so it made sense that we have this weird tar file. We'll do our best to unarchive it in the way that maybe makes some sense, right? And now we look at this stuff and it's like, that was so dumb. We should have never done this.
Right. Yeah. I think that like that thinking is definitely changing, especially with like internet standards where people are seeing all of these vulnerabilities in people like to call it like differential attacks, where you're exploiting the differences between two implementations to be able to, because nowadays there's actually like a pretty good chance that multiple implementations exist within a single application, as opposed to maybe before, if applications were simpler or not using, open source software with like tons of different dependency trees, there maybe that was less likely, but now there's just so many systems that are all interconnected, and they all probably have different implementation of whatever. And so if they see two different things from the same data, that's not good, right? It's exploitable.
Yep, exactly. And in fact, I have a chat coming up with Adara about Tarmageddon, and that's exactly the attack scenario they reference in their advisory, is using this certain Rust library will unarchive the tar file in one way, but then if you say inspect the tar archive with, you know, your endpoint detection or virus scanner, whatever the thing is, it's going to interpret it completely differently because it's some weird corner. I don't know the details. We'll figure that out next time.
Yeah.
But yeah, like this. Now I also love in your paper down towards the end, you have what is it? Recommendations and future work is the name of the title. And you just say restrict uncommon archive features. Like, yes, I feel like if I was writing an archive library now in 2025, I would be like, we are doing the 80% everyone needs and screw the rest of that stuff because like there's just dragons there, right?
Yeah, definitely. So one of the features that is like you mentioned, completely relic of the past is this idea of not wanting to overwrite and restart a zip, right? Because one of the things that was in the past is like if you had a zip that was too big, you'd have it spread across multiple drives, like multiple floppy drives. And so there's this feature in zip, and I believe in tar as well, that basically instead of like deleting a file or modifying a file, you would just write the file again to the archive, just a new time, and then say this is the authoritative one. And that's not necessary anymore. We don't need to do that. And so like PyPI now rejects archives that try to take advantage of this feature. If you have like multiple sets of content with the same name, it just rejects it. It says you don't need to do that because we already reject like zip files that have more than one drive specified. We already reject that, and so like that feature makes no sense to even support. And so there's like a whole bunch of features that we now reject. But the thing is like you can't just push this up and then like, oh, you just broke, 10% of the ecosystem. You have to be kind of sure that what you're going to do is not just going to break everything. And so part of this white paper is also like how I was able to run some regression, some testing beforehand, like some sampling of files to see that if I were to push this, it wouldn't just immediately break the whole world for Python.
Yeah, and it wasn't that bad. You have a table. I'm trying to find it somewhere in here.
Yeah, it's towards the bottom.
Your paper's too long, Seth.
I'm so sorry. Package as an enforcement mechanism.
There it is. Yeah, it looks like what? Eight packages, it looks like, out of the 13,460 have weirdness in them. Like, that seems pretty acceptable.
Pretty good. Yeah, so this is like evaluating the top 15,000 projects that had zips at all. And there's some that didn't have zips at all. And most of them that did have zips had no issues. And so there was only 8 that would have tripped and it was due to issues that were not malicious, obviously. It's just like mistakes in the tools or some custom tool that was being used to build the packages that we actually do want to reject because it was doing something incorrect.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, so let me ask this then. So you mentioned a little while ago that Python wheels are just zip files.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what, I mean, I know pip handles them. There's other things, I guess, too. Would those correctly bail on a weirdly formed wheel, or was wheel a little loosely defined?
So wheel is defined as a zip with certain files in it. And so it's pretty loosely defined.
Okay.
Like, I think the definition of a wheel installer is basically if you can unzip it, because that is... So like not super defined, I would say. Like the unzip tool is actually referenced there. So like if unzip works, it's a wheel. So like maybe there is some future work to revisit that definition and be a little bit more strict. I definitely want to do that as like a follow-up, and it should be a lot easier now that we've like kind of shown that you don't need all of these exotic zip features to have wheels working in the Python ecosystem. I don't think anyone believed that either, and so like it's fine either way, right? Like it wasn't exactly, people weren't saying like, "Oh, you're taking away my wheel features." It's like, no, 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 no. Everyone's happy.
Who
Yeah.
does anyone? I have never built a wheel in a way that I would say wasn't just let the tooling do whatever the tooling wants to do. I mean, I'm sure someone has like created this artisanal wheel at some point, but
Right.
I feel like for 99% of the users who've created wheels, you could change the package format and no one would know because the tooling does the work.
Oh, it's the law of big numbers, though, Josh. Right?
I
Like,
know, man.
there's
Like every crazy thing happens at least once.
yeah,
I know,
and
I
and
know.
and we're a very, very big number. So there's
Yes.
plenty of one-offs out there that are, and the other side of it is the installer side, right? Like if you have all of these installers that are using old like versions of pip or whatever, like if there's anything that's not backwards compatible, those won't be able to do the right thing
Yep.
by default. So
Yep. That's yeah. The backwards compatibility is huge for sure. Because
mhm.
I mean, I I've never existed in an ecosystem as large as Python, but the things I have worked on that it always seems funny. Like you think like, oh, this won't matter. No one's using this feature, and like inevitably someone's using it, and then they're very loud.
There's an XKCD about this, right? Like the spacebar no longer overheats the CPU.
I don't remember that. I'm sure I'll need to look it up. There's
I
an
think it's called My
XKCD for
Workflow.
everything. My workflow.
You broke my workflow.
Yes, that's everything. All right, but I want to also point out in your paper. So, and I'm curious on how you plan to do this. But you have the after the last one I talked about, which was what was the name of that title? Restrict uncommon archive features. There's fuzzing archive and differential testing. What does that mean? Because I am excited for this one.
Yeah, so there's this concept in kind of like software quality called fuzzing, which is basically it's a tool that takes like some inputs. Maybe you give it inputs of like, here's what a zip file looks like, right? And then it will mutate little pieces of that file and then just try every single mutation, like run some code that takes that zip file in, tries to parse it. And if it fails, however it blows up, whatever, it will record that and it'll just try the next one, right? And it just does that a million times. It's really, really good for like parsers. Is a really good use case for fuzzing because you just get to test every single branch quite quickly, usually. And there's some other concepts there, like, seed corpora, where you give it weird stuff that has broken in the past, and then you like mutate on that, and like hopefully you find more issues that way. So there's also this paper that I reference called like My Zip is Not Your Zip, that basically takes a huge table of every single zip implementation that this author was able to find, and then like cross-references it with every other zip implementation and sees what the differences are, how it handles different zip archives. And so like that data set and that set of implementations was like really interesting to me because I was like, okay, well, you could technically take a zip fuzzer and then run like the CPython zip file implementation and then maybe some other zip file implementation and feed it the same exact zip and then just kind of see what each project sees, like how did it parse that zip, and then compare. And if there's differences, that's interesting. That's something to like note down. Is it an issue, or is it something that's like expected? Is this like a backwards compatibility thing? The other side of like fuzzing that I think is a lot. So that's like really special, interesting, new thing that I think hasn't been done a lot yet. The stuff that I'm also interested in is what we were talking about earlier, where you would never expect a zip to extract outside of a directory, especially if you have like certain protection modes on. So CPython's zip file and tar file implementations both have options that basically say like, okay, this is a secure extraction, don't allow it to go outside. So because it's explicit there, what you can do is you can run a fuzzer and then say like, oh, I've got the security feature on, it should never extract outside. And then you just like watch the file system or watch the standard library modules that would be involved in like opening a file or writing a file, right? And you say, you can assert that no matter what the fuzzing input is, the protections are working correctly. And so like that's another interesting angle for this. And you can like run protections based on that. So
yeah. And I'm really interested in the differential testing aspect of this because you briefly touched on it a moment ago, but this is where you're going to take different implementations and look at what happens, especially with known bad, like, known purposefully malicious, like zip files. And this, I think, is extra interesting because, like, especially in the world of Python, I hesitate to guess how many zip parsers exist in PyPI. I'm sure the number would terrify all of us. But more importantly, I think, is like in the world of Python now, like the two big package installers are pip and UV, right? And I know
Mhm.
there's some even more being worked on, but like the way, like the literal code pip uses to unzip things is not the code UV uses because they're just fundamentally different language technologies, right? So
Yep.
like this whole
Yep.
like the differential aspect, I feel like is more intriguing than ever before.
Yeah, definitely. And some of the vulnerabilities that are a part of this white paper were discovered in UV, right? And there was like a differential between pip, which uses CPython's zip file module, and then UV, which uses its own zip implementation.
But
And
wait,
so, like,
Seth,
it was discovered
UV
that way.
is written in Rust. Rust doesn't have security bugs.
It avoids memory bugs,
There
but
you
you
go.
can always
Yeah,
write bad logic bugs. I mean,
for
that's
sure.
always an option.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I didn't realize. I guess I didn't click the links in your paper, so I didn't realize they came from UV. That's pretty cool. Nice. And
Yeah.
I suppose that's one of the other ironies, I guess, is I bet the UV folks started writing UV, and then once like they started dealing with like the massive sprawl of PyPI, I can only imagine the ridiculous corner cases that started showing up in the bug tracker.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of Python packages, it turns out.
Uh, yes, yes. I
Yeah.
I think about NPM all the time about this because NPM is like 10 times the size of everyone else, and
Right.
just it's so big. It's so big, and every
Mhm.
nutty thing you can imagine was happening. Anyway, okay, all right, Seth. I think it's time to go. I want to give you the floor. Like, let us know what you want us to do. What should we be paying attention to? What are you working on that we should wait to see what's coming? So take us home.
Yeah. So I really want to invite everyone again to apply to that CFP, submit your talks.
Yes.
You are the audience for this CFP. If you're listening to this podcast, you are the audience. So please submit talks to PyCon. Come to Long Beach, California, and spend some time with us and learn about Python and teach us about security. And it's going to be a great time.
For sure. And again, the link will be in the show notes. So go click it and submit your paper. It should be exciting. All right, Seth. It's been a treat, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Josh.
Yeah, thank you. I can't wait to see what crazy thing you got for us next time. So until then, have a good one.
Bye.